Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. I am extremely excited today to have Chad Stewart, Chad Stewart, author of the Britfield series and the global empire this guy is building right now. I just talked to him for the last 15 minutes and he got me all fired up, and I'm sure that's what he's going to do for all of you. Positive, motivating, has a vision, and I think this is just going to be a great break from all the hot garbage that we're constantly bombarded with, to really get some positive energy on here, to really get people to resonate high and be above the line. So welcome to the Grassroots Army podcast, Chad.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And we're very, very excited to have you, obviously, especially with the vision of what you're trying to do. So let's just go right from the beginning, brother, and just kind of talk about, what sparked this kind of movement that you're creating right now.
Sure, and I've said this before for people that have seen me before, but it's a quick overview. But originally from Newport Beach, California, I was back east in Wellesley, Massachusetts for 16 years, which is a long time to be back east, and but I loved it. And I did my undergraduate in British literature, European history, and then went on to grad school. And then actually about over 12 years ago, I was in investment banking, of all things. I kind of went from Bank of America to Morgan Stanley to Merrill Lynch. And it really wasn't a fit for me, as I think most corporate jobs for people are not a great fit, right? You kind of do what you think you have to do, or you do what you have to do, but there's so much inside you, so much creativity. And so I was sent down to this really boring seminar in Providence, Rhode Island. I think it was on the weekend too, of all things, and you had to go. And I think it was insurance. It's like, yikes. And I started to drift and I started to doodle, and I just doodled a simple circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl, and I wrote the boy and the balloon. And for some reason, I'm looking at that doodle and I'm like, gosh, that would be a really cool story. It just grabbed me. It was my moment. It's so funny from such a simple little thing. And I just started to see this whole story unfold. And so I went home that weekend and literally just on one piece of paper, trying to think of it, approaching it simplistically. I'm like, where does it take place? So it starts up in Yorkshire, Northern England, in present time at this horrible orphanage called Weatherly Orphanage. It's about Tom. He's a 12-year-old orphan, been an orphan his whole life. He's been at Weatherly for 6 years. And this is the year he's going to escape. But he's not going anywhere without his best friend, Sarah, who's also 12. And somewhere along the lines, when they escape, they commandeer a hot air balloon, but they're relentlessly chased by the illustrious Detective Gower Stone, who's relentless and known for capturing runaway orphans and missing children. And so that was it, kind of the gist of it. I thought, it'd be kind of cool. Starts up in Yorkshire, and then we go to Oxford, right? That'd be kind of cool. World of Academia, and then Windsor, and then London, and then finally Canterbury. And so I sat down, took me 4 years, 2,500 hours to write Britfield the Lost Crown, 384-page book. From concept and doodle to launching it took 10 years. 10 years of hard work, commitment, frustration, anger, disappointment, rejection. 10 years. 10 years of just focus, probably 10,000 hours from concept to finally launching August 2019. Since then, it's become a national bestseller. It's one of the most awarded books in children's fiction. And it's actually in the top 1% of all books ever launched within that same time frame, and that's even before the movie, which is exciting. So it's now a 7-book series that travels the entire world. Book 2 we launched in 2021. Britfield and the Rise of the Lion takes place in France. That's 474 pages. Tom and Sarah are now 13 years old. And then we launched book 3 last year, which you can see behind me, Britfield and the Return of the Prince. That takes place in Italy, 575 pages. And I'm now writing book 4, Britfield and the Eastern Empire, which is Eastern Europe and Russia. Book 5, which I'll start next year, is Asia. Book 6 is South America. And then we come back. Book 7, Britfield Lost Crown, United States. Tom and Sarah are now 18. And so really what it is number one, it's a book that takes place in present time, and that is so important. It's not post-apocalyptic. It's not in the future. It's not in the past. It's right now. It's right here. I don't use any of the devices that pretty much most authors use: witchcraft, magic, demigods, superheroes. So it's as authentic as can be, based on family, friendship, loyalty, courage, and faith. And it has the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. So that's what's in every single book. So as children are reading it, as adults are reading it, they're learning about geography, art, architecture, and culture in every single book. Our youngest reader is 7, our oldest reader is 93, and 55% of our reading audience are adults. And we've had 12-year-olds that have read this book in 5 hours because of the way it's designed. So that's kind of a quick overview. We're in development of the first of 7 movies. We've got 2 television programs. I'm actually working on products this week, which is kind of exciting. And we got a global tour planned. So
That's amazing, everything that you've been able to accomplish. And just to let everyone know, people tend to think you can just write a book and get it published and then it's scot-free. They don't understand how much work and effort and sacrifice that it takes just to get published, but then to make it a bestseller. That's just a whole different level of dedication that you have to do. So congratulations, number one. But let's talk about, especially because everything you said it was a breath of fresh air for me. Because everything that you see that's going on in the school boards right now with them pushing pornographic books in the school libraries underneath the umbrella of inclusive, all inclusive with the alphabet mafia and everything else. And it's like we need to get back to the basics. And what you just described is kind of like how I grew up, being creative, using your imagination, not getting this stuff force-fed down your throat with what these kids are getting force-fed now in schools, but getting back to what allows children to actually thrive.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting as you're saying that. I remember, I grew up in Corona Mar, California, which is part of Newport Beach. And, I had a great childhood. I was very fortunate. But our elementary school was right across the street. So it was kind of cool, probably a bit too close. But and then right down the block was the park. And I remember we had this great neighbor and she had this big yard next door. And she allowed me to build a fort there. And it's like, I mean, you have no idea the impact of those type of opportunities for a child when they're 7, 8, 9, 10. That stuff sticks, it resonates. And my fort went from this little 2 pieces of wood to, 4 walls to a second story, And then fast forward 15 years, 10 years later, when I'm in New England and I've got a development and architectural firm that puts me through school, and I was literally designing and building homes, custom homes. And that came from that building the fort. That really, it did. And that love of creating things. I had a wonderful 6th grade teacher. In 6th grade, our assignment was to write a book, right? And she was a very creative teacher, right? She kind of there's certain rules, right? But others, it's like, well, go ahead. If you want to do that, but just take responsibility for it. Or let's do this, or let's try this. And so the assignment was to write a book. It was worth 1/3 of our grade, which is a big, heavy thing. I think it had to be 20 to 25 pages. And, you paragraph and a picture and stuff. It wasn't like today's, computer system. And it was hard. It was daunting. But I learned very early, what do you write? And you write about what you love and you write about what you know. And I love James Bond movies. And again, because it was my book, I could write whatever I wanted to. And so my first official book, if you will, was James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out. I was a 12-year-old Secret Service agent living in England, working for the British government, assigned with tracking down and capturing this villain through Europe. And that was the first book. And fast forward 40 years later, Britfield the Lost Crown, that takes place in England. And so I'm just using these as examples of having that opportunity. Kids will never know what they're capable of doing until you give them a chance to do it, until they're exposed to it. And if they want to play a musical instrument, go out and rent. You don't have to buy it. Go out and rent the musical instrument. If they get burned out after 3 weeks, okay, cool. You know what they don't want to do. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's not what they're going to do, but what they don't want to do. But you give them as much exposure, especially at that age when they're young, to creative environments. But I don't want to digress. We can come back to that. But I mean, it's just, there's so many opportunities. And I think getting back to the basics, absolutely. It's always going to be about that, coming back to the basics. It's about family values. It's about spending time with your kids. In so many ways, it's like, oh, we're such an advanced civilization. No, we're not. we're going the opposite direction. So, yeah.
Yeah. And timing is everything, right? I mean, if this book would have came out, I don't know, 15 to 20 years ago, it probably wouldn't have had the impact. No. I really feel that people are thirsty for this type of material now. And like you're literally blazing a new trail that was actually an old trail, but just got full of weeds and trees and overgrowth. But you're literally blazing a new trail now. And I really feel that people have an outlet to go into and actually get back to the basics with creativity, with imagination, but also teaching with history and everything else. And you did it all with your series. Like it's an all-inclusive kind of teaching moment for these kids.
Yeah, it's exciting. And there's a great quote by Victor Hugo that says, "No standing army can stand against an idea whose time has come." And our time has come. And the idea of Britfield, I mean, there's no army, there is nothing that can defeat this time for us. And like you said, 10 years ago, if this thing was released, maybe it wouldn't have had that impact. And it's hard to say, because we're always like, I want it now. You know what I mean? Or I was ready 5 years ago, or whatever, 10 years ago. But it was perfect timing, and it's exciting. And again, too, it's taking a long time. I mean, it's been 4.5 years since the launch of the first book. And yet everything we've done has really been a soft launch. because we are in this for the long haul. This is the next 25, 30 years, at least of my life. And that dynasty will be handed over to that next thing. Right? We hope that, Britfield the Lost Crown is going to be in libraries in the next, 50 to 100 years. We've created, if you will, a timeless classic, and it's hard. It's a lot of work. But I say all of this to say that it's not just about writing or a book. It's anything that you do, whatever profession it is. That it's very accurate, that the difference between a hobby and a profession is about 8,000 to 10,000 hours, and that's not busy 10,000 hours. That's diligent, committed time, 8,000 to 10,000 hours, and every overnight success takes between 1 to 2 decades. That's a truth. That's a fact. I've done you as well as you. I'm sure I've researched them all. Everything from Ralph Lauren to MGM to every great success out there, company or person, and it's been filled with years of hardship, bankruptcy. I mean, you name it. And I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying that there's a great book out there called Will and Vision. I don't think it's in print anymore, but it's why Federal Express made it. You know what I mean? Or why Nordstrom's is still around. It profiles 2 different companies, one that failed, one that succeeded. It's because they had that will and they had that vision. And it's like you're looking above the circumstances and they're pushing through it. And I mean, there was one quote with Federal Express, because everyone said, what a ridiculous idea. We have a traditional, mail system. It's like it'll never. I think he was at Yale and he got a C on his business plan. The teacher goes, "What a dumb idea," and he said there was one moment in time after he'd started his company, put a lot of his own money into it, that if the wind had shifted just one single direction, everything would have tumbled. It was like this house of cards, right? And I think on their first thing that they had like 130 packages. They had their system in place and they were trying to send them out to get them on time. And I think out of 130 packages, 7 arrived on time. I mean, just disaster. Amazon ran in the red for years and was failing badly. And I'm not a big Amazon fan. I know what they're about and what they're doing, but I'm just using them as examples that all these things take time and a lot of hard work. And it does suck sometimes, and it is frustrating, but anything of value takes time. And if anything that you do should be of high value and worth that time. And part of it is the journey, and it's like, as we're hitting success after success, and I see the future and I see what we're going to do with Britfield, and I'm excited about it, but I'm trying to enjoy, the simple things along the lines. I love every book that we sell. We just did an interview for a station. I was going to find this letter real quick. There it is. And it was out of Canada, and it was just really cool. We've gotten all these orders from Canadians, and I love my Canadian brothers and sisters. I love Canada. You guys are great, awesome country and stuff. And I love that, and I got this just last week. This is from a school where their assignment for this class was to write your favorite author a letter and ask them some questions. And I was like, gosh, just to even be in that category out of 30 kids is like amazing. Are you kidding me? Like I'm against Dickens and the Hunger Games and all the other stuff that's out there. And I got 4 letters, 4 letters. And I love them and I love all this stuff. And so what I'm saying is like, it's hardship and it's a lot of waiting and disappointment and frustration, but I know where we're going because we've got great vision, we've got a great will, we've got a great team, and it's through the trials that, it either makes or breaks you. And that's all real true. And I know this is all the kind of stuff that you're used to talking about or being a part of, but it's true and it's accurate. And we live in a flash over substance society right now where, oh my gosh, look how successful they are. Number one, most of them aren't. They're all just actors acting the part. And that's the same thing with Amazon, Facebook. I'm sure you cover all that stuff. These are just actors. These aren't pioneers. These aren't little geniuses. These aren't people that created something out of their garage. This is all funded, but with hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're just actors. Or you see them on television. It's like, yeah, but if you go back to any actor that's successful right now, I guarantee you can go back for at least 10 years in their life to when you didn't even know they existed. And it was 500 auditions to get one bit part for a commercial, and then waited another year and maybe they got 2 commercials, and then a walk-on for the sitcom, and then a lead in a program that wasn't picked up and failed. I mean, literally. And it's just the point is they wanted to be an actor, and they loved the art of acting. They couldn't imagine doing anything else, and they stuck with it. And it takes at least 10 years. You know what I mean? And so
I want to hit on that because you're exactly right. We live in this instant gratification society where everybody wants the 20-year-old apple tree overnight, and they don't understand that you have to plant the seed. And with that seed, you have to have faith that it's going to germinate. You can't dig up that seed and disturb it, or it'll never grow. And then one day it produces, it germinates, it comes out, it peeks its little head through the soil. You can't eat off it yet. you still have to nurture it, water it, fertilizer, have faith. And then one day you have a bountiful harvest. And then that's what people have to understand is this idea started way back when with you. And then you have nurtured that and worked and got the soil fertilized and watered and still had faith. And now, boom, you have something that's very, very magical. And it seems like it's really creating like an avalanche of abundance coming your way with what you originally designed this book to be, is to reach the masses, correct? Because you have a world tour coming up.
I do, yeah, and it's one child at a time, right? Although adults love this book, and we're in development for the first of 7 major motion pictures. We actually believe that the first Britfield movie will be one of the most successful films in cinematic history for a lot of reasons, and we can talk about that. Here's our script, which I showed you earlier, which is pretty cool. I just got this. I picked this up yesterday. This is the 3rd draft, so I've been working on this with a professional scriptwriter. He's amazing. His name's Rick. He's written over 40 movies, worked with all of Hollywood. And I handpicked him last Christmas Eve, and we signed the contract. And I've been working with him for a year prior to that signing of the contract because I knew he's the right person for the book. And it's not easy taking Britfield the Lost Crown, which is a very cool, awesome, fast-paced adventure series. I also we're going to talk about the tour, but I was going to say this too. We took it, we transitioned the book into a 90-minute 2-act theatrical play specifically for elementary middle schools. And we piloted it last October at a school in San Diego over 4 nights, which was fantastic. I spent 18 months developing it. This is our theatrical play. How cool is that?
And
this is for
again, just not to interrupt you, Chad, but what we constantly hear is having drag queen shows in these schools and everything else. And this is what education should be about right here.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because it was the theater director Michelle, and we did the. I don't think I said this, but when we launched our book, we did a 9,000. I drove 9,000 miles, 23 states, and presented at over 200 schools and more than 40,000 students across the nation, all the way up to Seattle, Chicago, down to New Orleans, and all the way over to Memphis, Tennessee, which was amazing. And every type of school you can imagine. And one of these schools, which was in San Diego, in fact, it was the first school that we went, like our official launch of the book at a school. And I was leaving, and Michelle said to me, she goes, "Jay, did you ever think of turning Britfield the Lost Crown into a theater play?" And I thought, no. You know what I mean? Like movie, television, yes. Products, absolutely. Like theater play. But it's stuck, right? That idea stuck. And so 18 months ago, we transitioned it, 384 pages into a 87-page, 90-minute 2-act play for theater, specifically again for elementary, middle school theaters. And I think it would be good. It would do well at high school too. But what we're trying to do is again bring back classic theater, bring back great family values, bring back a relevant play that's taking place right now in current time that teachers, that homeschoolers, that schools can put on and learn a little bit about England and have this fast-paced, exciting story transpire up on the stage. We have the director's script, we have the actor's script, we have director's notes, we have 28 sound effects, 54 digital slides that if they want, they can project the images on the back of the screen. So when Tom and Sarah are flying over England, you have all these gorgeous pictures. We've designed it that, the main scenes are on the stage, but then as that light goes down, you have a scene that comes up on the right or the left and keeps the story moving the whole time. So it's like a seamless, presentation. It's got roles for over 30 actors. It's got speaking roles for over 30 actors, and all the actors involved in the theatrical play through the entire time, whether it's background or suddenly, they go from orphan to police officer to, whatever it is. And they're just involved. And it's an amazing thing. And it's like, because again, too, what you have in traditional schools today is you got about 80 to 90% that are musicals. And nothing against the musical, but you're alienating 80 to 90% of kids that really want to go into theater. And theater is wonderful. It's because your kid wants to go into theater doesn't mean they want to be a professional actor. It's everything you learn. You talk to anyone that's been in theater, it's amazing. It's working as a team. It's telling a story. It's breaking that nervousness of getting up in front of an audience. Put it this way, you wouldn't catch me dead at 12 years old, being in part of a theater program, but I wish I did. And it came later in my life and stuff, but it's all the things that happen in being in theater. And somebody got this really cool, fun, exciting, fast-paced adventure series that you can put on at your school and stuff. So that's another thing that we've got right now that we're excited about. So we're launching our global tour hopefully next year. It's going to start in Britain and in March. And we actually just picked up a British distributor for Britfield the Lost Crown. So we're really excited. We were at the Frankfurt Book Fair last week, and we've been working on this one particular distributors. We're excited that'll cover all of Britain and all of Europe now, and we've got another one that we're working on for the United States and stuff. So we're in thousands of schools right now. We're being taught in hundreds of schools. We have a 83-page study guide based on national standards for book 1 to be taught in the classroom. And we're already in, many bookstores and libraries. But again, it just takes time to build the momentum. And for us, it was really hitting the trilogy. It's like you can only do so much with one book. You know what I mean? And someone they'll get the book and like, oh, this is great. And it's like, okay, there's nothing else. And they move on, and then you get your second book and then you get your third book. And now with the trilogy, it's a nice little sort of 3-pack, if you will. Retailers are more interested in it. Kids will stay with it for now like a month. You know what I mean? They read book 1, they go on to book 2, they go on to book 3 and stuff. And I'm working on book 4. So you have to it's hard. You just have to keep working at that stages, and sections. So
you said that you're in thousands of schools. Are these public schools, private schools, charter? I mean, what's
across the board? Yeah, it was awesome. We picked up a wonderful partnership about 2 years ago. And again, it was a friend of a friend that gave me this recommendation. And it's a retailer that's in 55,000 schools across the nation. They're a lot like Scholastic, where they do the book tours and they offer all the different books and products. And they've been around for 30 years. 2 years ago, which is amazing, they picked Britfield and the Lost Crown as their #1 middle school book. And Stefan, the gentleman that I work with, he gets like 2,000 to 3,000 books a year from all the major publishers. And he loved Britfield, and he gets it, and he saw it. And it was picked over Harry Potter, which I thought was cool. And so they've been leading these kind of campaigns every semester. And so they did a big one out in Southeast last year. And so we're already been distributed to thousands of those schools. And then I'd probably say another couple thousand have already picked up the book. It's in the library or they're teaching it in the classroom because it's designed to be taught in the classroom. I mean, what a great book, right? And you bring in Britfield and Lost Crown about family, friendship, loyalty, and courage. And there's no black magic, witchcraft, demigods, or superheroes. And it bumps another one of those other books out. You know what I mean? And so it's just, seed by seed, right? Book by book, child by child, school by school. That's our strategy. So there's 120,000 elementary middle schools in the United States. We want to be in 90% of them in the next 10 years. So
that was going to be my next question, Chad. Like 10 years from now, where do you see yourself?
Yeah, it'll be just having a lot of fun, right? Because I love giving back, if you will. And so we have some really cool stuff that we want to do, and it's not so much about selling books, but giving the books. We're developing like the Britfield Bear, for one of these. Probably next Christmas. We've got the Britfield tartan, the royal tartan, which is really cool. And so we want a male and a female Britfield bear that we can start distributing and giving out to, hospitals and orphanages. And I mean, we just have like a lot of cool things. So it's not so much the grand success. It's like in 10 years from now, it's probably movie number 4, right? Which would be amazing. I see a lot more travel. I see a lot of more interaction, but I see just having fun, doing great things and inspiring tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people with the series, and giving to those that don't have. That's really that's our heart. Our heart is for kids and the ones that.
And that's what's real about you, Chad, is you can feel your heart and your passion behind this, and that is what's most attractive, because you're not obviously in it for the wrong reasons. You're in it to create a vision to change humanity. And then we talked a little bit about before the interview with what's going on with the public school systems and how they're losing steam. Like you made the quote, they've already lost. Can you go into that?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because on my tour, it was March 2020. I was in Memphis, Tennessee. Just did 4 schools in 2 days back to back, and it was like a girls' private, and then it was a public, and then it was a Jewish school. It was like all these different schools, and all the schools were amazing, and all the kids were amazing. Kids are born creative. We can get into that a little bit with the creativity, because it's important to cover. But anyway, and that's when everything had happened, this quote unquote thing, and all the schools started closing. And I'm like, okay, that tour's over, So, and I was so excited because I was in the heart of America, and I was like, finally, like Tennessee, and I wanted to get to Kentucky. I've never been to Kentucky. I'm like, I can't. I'm like right there. Like finally, I get to Kentucky. I don't know why Kentucky's been this thing on my mind. Like I love horses and all that kind of stuff, but. And then Indiana, and then Michigan. I was like in the heart of it. Ohio. It's like, oh my gosh, Ohio is going to be lit. You know what I mean? It's like got so many bookstores, and it's just it's a big homeschool state. And I had to turn around and drive all the way back to San Diego. And it was like kind of your tail between your leg. And so I'm driving back, and I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be very interesting when this whole thing is over, how many parents send their kids back to traditional schools. And I'd ask some of my friends, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, what do you think it is? I mean, is it 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 15, which is a lot, right? That's millions of parents that say, no, we're not sending them back. And they said, why? And I said, I'm basing it on 3 things. Number one, for the first time, parents are going to be horrified by what their children are being exposed and taught at school. Horrified. Number 2, how far behind their kids are in certain subjects. And number 3, that you could sit down, concentrate on the subject for the day or whatever your work is, and in 2 to 3 hours, finish. And then, I don't know, have the rest of the day to play at 10 years old, to have fun, to create something, to write a book, to go out and build a fort, to, to do 100 other things that are creative and fun as you grow up, instead of being in these institutions for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I mean, are you kidding me? And your only qualification to be in that classroom is that you're 12 years old. And it's a broken model. It was designed to fail. The billions of dollars, well, we don't know. They know exactly what it is. It's succeeded for those that are behind the traditional public system. And this isn't a criticism of all those wonderful teachers out there that are fighting the good fight and are stuck, if you will, or are seeing the kind of crap that's rolling down. I get that. And I know that there's tremendous great teachers out there, but it is a sort of socialistic, ridiculous system that's been designed, and it's the beginning of the end of it. This pandemic that they had orchestrated, if you will, had a huge backlash. We have never, as a nation, been more awake, which is exciting. People are starting to challenge this ridiculous model and system. And I think it's the last days of Nazi Germany for the educational system. Now, they might, tug along for the next 5 to 7 years, kicking and screaming, but it's over. We're in a homeschool revolution right now. We've gone from 5 million to 15 million homeschoolers and growing. Homeschooling kids are the most educated, well-rounded children I have ever seen or met in my life. And I love that movement. I think the homeschool movement is the most natural way of education that exists. And we can talk more about that, because it doesn't necessarily mean that a parent has to stay home. There's so many different options to make that work. And I think we're in a education reformation, much like Martin Luther 500 years ago. And it's happening. It's happening. And unfortunately, what you're seeing is a few isolated situations of the nutbags and the weirdos with their crap or their books or dressing up, but there's 110,000 schools out there, you know what I mean? And it doesn't mean that it's influencing all of them. We are a strong nation. We are a God-fearing nation. We are patriots. We are not a divided nation. They want to make you think that, but we are not a divided nation. We love our family. We love America. We love our freedom, but it's divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. They own 5 corporations own 96% of the media. You shouldn't be reading the newspapers. You should be watching programs like yours. I haven't looked at a traditional newspaper in, I don't know, 6 years? Why? Yeah. There's no difference between mainstream media and Hollywood. None. There aren't journalists anymore. They're actors, and they're not covering news. They're reading scripts. And the funny thing about the whole media and mainstream media is the idea that this corporation, whether it's NBC or ABC or CNN, are CNN still around? I thought Mad Magazine bought CNN. Are they still around? I know they've dropped 90. I know they've dropped 90%. I mean, they're like Saturday Night Live, although they're not funny.
Yeah.
But the idea of their very existence is that we're covering the news. You're watching us. We're covering what we think you should know, and we're going to give the opinion of what you should think. That's how it's all set up. And it's if you kind of pull back from it for a minute, the audacity of it, right? Reading the newspaper. Our corporation has decided what you're going to read on the front page, what we think is interesting, and all the bits and pieces are the things that we're covering because that's what we think. And it's all propaganda. It's all nonsense. It's ridiculous. And that's gone. I mean, like programs like yours are knocking it out of the park. There are so many great alternative podcasters or researchers or interviewers out there right now that it's the true media. It's not the new media. It's the true media. And a lot of these shows are ranked higher than mainstream. And so mainstream's in the last days, and I think that's been stated many times.
Yeah,
So
experiencing that firsthand. I mean, if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe that it's true, and that's
Sure.
one thing that's happening. Is just like you said with shows out there, podcasters, they're really carving it up, and people are in search for just the truth, whether they agree with it or not. People just want to be told the truth, and then we can deal with it. Then we can have a conversation. We can figure it out as we're going, because that's what needs to happen, especially in America, is for people to have this conversation and work together to solve big problems. There's no doubt about it. Let's go back to the creativity thing with this, because you said that it was a big point. Why is that such a huge point?
Yeah, let me end it with a quick quote too, because creativity, it's a perfect circle back, because creativity is at the core of everything. And we've been in a creativity crisis for the last 30 years, and that's been by design. And then we've been going down, kids have been going down by a 45-degree angle every single year in 10 specific areas. And I can read some numbers real quick, but it's fun. It's an interesting thing that William Casey, he used to be the director of the CIA, and they have their fingers in everything. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's the quote that he said. He goes, "We know our job will be done when everything the American people believe is a lie." Can you imagine a comment like that?
Wow.
I mean, we'll know that our job is done. This is our mission in life, that everything the American people believe is a lie. And that's kind of where we're at, right? And so we absolutely need to do our due diligence. We need to work a little bit harder. We need to do our own research. Don't take my word for it. Don't take your word for it, right? Do your research. I've been doing that for 12 years and relearning history. But anyway, so we've been in a creativity crisis for the last 10 years. And there's a great book, or 30 years, sorry, great book out there, launched, I think, about 8 or 10 years ago, called The Creativity Crisis. It's by Dr. Kim. She's a researcher, writer out of William and Mary. And she'd been literally documenting this for 20 years, hundreds of thousands of students. And she saw in the United States specifically, and then even globally, that since the 1990s, schools have killed curiosities and passions, narrowed visions, lowered expectations, stifled risk-taking, destroyed collaboration, narrowed minds, killed deep thoughts and imagination, forced conformity, solidified hierarchy. Does that sound about right? And as a result, children today, less emotionally expressive, less energetic, less humorous, that kills me, less imaginative, less talkative and verbally expressive, less uncontroversial, less lively and passionate, less perspective, and less likely to look at things from a different angle. And so this is your traditional public school system that is designed to take creativity out of your kids. Now, on the other side of that, research statistically right now, globally, creativity is the #1 most important skill set in the world. Creatives are preferred with corporations. It doesn't matter what background it is. 5-to-1 to 10-to-1. We are in a creative revolution right now. The new MBA is the MFA. And it's exciting. So we can kind of dig into that, but that's some great overview. I have one more thing too. It's interesting. A test was done by a gentleman by the name of, I think it was Dr. Lamb, and he created a creativity test for NASA. And because the astronauts, that's a whole nother subject, but the astronauts, needed to be, critical and engineering and mathematical background, but they also needed to be creative to think quickly on their feet and things like that. And so he took that same test, he applied it into the school system, and he started to teach, he started to test 5-year-olds. And he noticed that 5-year-olds, this is coming back full circle, what I said earlier in our show, 5-year-olds were testing at 98% on this test. Geniuses, creative geniuses, 98 out of 100 kids, little geniuses. Tested that same group of kids at 10 years old, it dropped all the way down to 30%. And then he tested them again at 15, and it dropped all the way down to 12%. And so in 10 years, it went from 98% creativity, capacity, critical thinking, looking at things from a different way, inventing, entrepreneurs, to 10%, brutal. And so
basically ripping the heart out of America right there. And you have a fan. I want to highlight this comment that we just received right here. So we're listening as we homeschool today. Thank you so much for great books. Our girls have loved each one, and they keep track of the release dates so we can get the next one in the series as soon as possible.
That's awesome.
I mean, how does that make you feel when you read something like that?
Love it. Yeah, I love it. I got an email from it's from a mom of an 8-year-old, but the 8-year-old wrote it, and she goes, just want to tell you, she goes, I just got done reading book 1, and oh my gosh, it was so much fun, and you're a great writer, and we're starting on book 2 with my family, and thank you so much. And it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is gold. You know what I mean? Like, it's exciting, and we've had huge impact on families and kids. And what I'm seeing a lot is families are like reading, because like the kids are so into the books now that families are reading with the kids and talking about it. And I love that. And I love that they're getting involved as a family. I'll never forget, I had a email, I think it was last year, and it was a family. It was when book 3 came out, and she goes, and I did pre-orders for like our fans and stuff, and she's like, we just got book 3, but darn it, I have to wait because my husband's he's on business and he's not home for a couple of days, and we read it as a family. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. And then another family that said, yeah, it goes, we just invented the Britfield board game, and we start to play that every weekend. And I thought, whoa, like, what does that look like? How cool is that? So it's neat when your ideas or your books or your stories generate, more stories, if you will, or inspire the kids. I surprised a 13-year-old last month on her 13th birthday. The parents, I knew the parents, and they contacted me and said, you're her favorite author. She loves all the Britfield series, and they're her favorite books. Is there any way you could, show up to her lunch? And it was locally, and I thought, sure. And so, it was amazing. And she's like, oh my gosh, And so we talked for like 2.5 hours. But what was cool about it is she's now in chapter 12 or 13 of a book she's writing of this adventure inspired by Britfield. And I'm like, wow, isn't that awesome? Like at 13, I wasn't writing a chapter book, at 13. And what was cool too is that her and her friends got together and they started the Britfield book club, and they get together and they meet and they play out the characters. And so, I just get these little tidbits of stories and hear from it. And it was interesting too. We were contacted, I think about back in May from a bookstore in New Zealand, and said, we love the Britfield series. Is there any way you would ship us, books 1 through 3? And again, it was a lost. I mean, it was so expensive. It's like, we don't make money, because New Zealand's so far. But I'm like, well, ship them, you know what I mean? And so we shipped them over like these books and stuff, which was cool. And then like within 2 weeks, she goes, it was amazing. She goes, we had them out to some parents, Americans that just moved to town who homeschool their kids, walked into our bookstore and said, yeah, do you have Britfield the Lost Crown? And I thought, oh my gosh, like, wow, full circle. So it's exciting to hear the things that we hear and the feedback that we get. And that it's something great, you know what I mean? That it's meaning that it's real, it's natural. Like kids are reading this and they're learning about geography and art, architecture and culture. They're learning collaboration and communication. I mean, that's what's so great about these books. And I know it because we received thousands of letters from our reading audience, and it's like they connect with the characters because they can relate to Tom. They can relate to Sarah because they're not waving a wand to solve a problem. They're not saying a spell. They don't have superpowers that they can rely on. They don't walk through walls, or if they need to get, you know what I mean? And I'm doing research on my books all the time, daily. I'm pulling it up. Like right now in book 4, I'm 70% done, and then I jump back and I'm editing through it. A couple of days ago, I was looking up like what kind of flowers grow in April in Vienna. You know what I mean? And so like I'm pulling that up, and then like, what do they smell like? And then like, what are the roads? What's the temperatures like? And how often does it rain? And you know what I mean? Like all this stuff to make it as authentic and real. I'm pulling up maps, of the different streets. I'm looking at the buildings, describing the buildings and the different locations. And
that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. You never think that. I mean, I'm a published author, not in your area, but the amount of detail that you're researching to make your book stand out, I mean, that just blew my mind. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and again, I don't saturate it or drown it in detail, which I think too many authors do, right? I think almost 70 or 80%, right? And even the good ones. It's like you're reading along and the story's developing, and all of a sudden here's another paragraph of what the room looks like in the sunlight. And it's like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like that's irrelevant. That has nothing to do with the story. And so, I always try to be careful with that. And I always end up with a paragraph that becomes, 4 lines that becomes 2 lines. And if you could take a paragraph and accomplish the exact same thing within 1 to 2 lines, that's great writing. And that really is my goal. So it's like I give you enough. I give you a taste of it. I frame it, but I let you fill it in. And again, that's making you work and your creative mind. I'll give you a great example. Like in book 1, you can see the balloon behind me. I describe, like as they're approaching it, I describe the basket and the tanks and how tall it is and the netting, but I never describe in book one the color of the balloon. And I did that specifically to let you color it. You know what I mean? And so, it's like you could ask 50 different kids that have read it, what colors is the balloon, and you'd get 50 different answers. And I love that. That's kind of my idea of relying on you as the readers. And I'm pulling some of that creativity out. So I'll frame stuff and I'll let you fill it in. I don't go into extensive detail about the tie pin with the gold and the little diamond glistening in the sunlight. Who cares? It's not about it's relevant to the story or relevant to the character. You know what I mean? So I was going to read this one line though. This is from those 4 letters. This is just last week, and it's just one line. He says it's from Nathan. I think he's 12, and he says the entire Britfield series was very interesting and enjoyable for me to read, but I definitely liked Britfield and the Return of the Prince the most out of all your 3 books. I liked it the most because the storytelling and the plot was amazing, and the way it was described was just great. Sometimes, because the book was so good, one could forget they were even reading a book. Isn't that a great comment? I love that comment. Like he's so into it, he's forgetting that he's reading a book. And I thought, okay, my job is done. I love that.
Now, you're obviously pushing back against a machine here.
Sure.
Are you getting any, negative feedback from the other side with what they're trying to accomplish in the schools, and you're kind of pushing the envelope with, hey, we're getting back?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, of course. And it's like, the funny thing is you're asking that, and it's like, it's so disconnected from me because it's irrelevant. It's like, anything that doesn't help us move forward is just discarded. But you have your team of failed authors out there that will criticize things before it's even read, or that don't like it. Especially in the public systems, there's a lot of everything has been infiltrated, if you will, and let's be honest, poisoned. And so you've got some great patriots there, but you've also got a very nasty machine of people that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years. They're part of these districts and things like that. And so, because we have interest in one of the largest charter school systems in the nation to adapt the Britfield series into their reading curriculum, which is great. This is the point. You're going to do it sooner or later, so you might as well do it now. You know what I mean? So, but that's okay. But we are getting kickback here and there and stuff. And I think it's twofold. One is it's a David and Goliath story, but as you remember the results of how that ended, it wasn't good for David. I mean, it was good for David, but it wasn't good for Goliath. It was a great story too. I actually have five stones from a pastor friend of mine that visited, and I said, while you're there, if you don't mind, can you go down to that river and grab me 5 little stones? And he brought them back. It was so cool. What I love about that story is when David went down to get the 5 stones, it wasn't because he thought in case he missed, it was that Goliath had 4 brothers. But my favorite part about this, and this is my message to your listeners, David ran up the hill. Ran up the hill to conquer Goliath. So I kind of love that aspect. But in many ways, I think what we're up against is it's like the Revolutionary War with Washington, and I had that sense as we were getting into it. We're on the right side of history. The battle's nasty. We're against the most powerful army in the world, as Washington was, and you need to reread the Revolution. It's like you sort of have these great pictures, of kneeling by his horse and the victory at Yorktown. It's like, oh my gosh, was that a long 8 years? I mean, it was brutal, nasty. But it was staying in the game for that right moment at Yorktown. And then that set the course of history. That changed history. That battle, that defeat, the victory of America in the Revolution changed history. Just like Emerson said, the shot heard around the world and conquered Massachusetts. Changed history. So it's exciting. So I feel a lot of that, of what we're up against and what we're doing. But and we talked about this earlier. I don't really pay attention to it. I don't pay attention to the negativity. I don't pay attention to a lot of the current events, which is mostly just fiction or fear. Look over here while we're doing this. Classic. I'm focused on a razor sharp focus on Britfield, on what we're doing. I've got my lists of accomplishments of things I need to do every day. And I do that, and I look out. We have strategy for the next 3, 5, 10 years, and every day there's something to do. Do you know what I'm saying? And so sometimes it's great. I'm on an interview with you and it's fantastic and it feels great and I'm reaching people. And sometimes it's editing for 5 hours, going crazy out of your mind or something. Or sometimes it's Cricketville, as much as everything that's going on. That's what kills me the most. I just like, that's that quietness. And I'm like, like nothing. Like, you just do this big campaign and there's like not an inch of movement. And you're like, what? It's just like frustrating. But there's always things to do. You know what I mean? There's always things to do. And so those are kind of some of my analogies of what we're up against. But I don't focus on it. I don't concentrate on it. And I do not let it get me distracted. I have a great quick little story that has always resonated with me to put this. But really our focus right now too is the next generation of kids. That's my focus. That's our beachhead. And but there's a great story about Shackleton, the famous explorer. And a lot of people have written books on it and done leadership. And he was the one that everything had kind of been accomplished. And so he was trying to get to the South Pole and be the farthest one to track across the South Pole. And it's interesting too, because he was very well known within the Navy. And he had this he was trying to recruit men, and he said it's like a paragraph, and you can find it online. It's kind of cool. And he says long hard journey, little pay, unlikely having success, most likely dying, if interested. And he had like 500 people apply because they knew who he was. Yeah. And so anyway, long story short, I just want to kind of narrow forward, but they finally got their ship to the South Pole, but things had delayed them, and all of a sudden, within a couple of weeks, their boat got locked in with the frozen water, and to such an extent that it started to crush the ship. Can you imagine? I think it's 1900s, early 1900s. You didn't have a satellite phone. You didn't have a motorboat. You didn't have helicopters. You were in the middle of nowhere, and Shackleton's literally they'd gotten off the boat and kind of set up camp, and they're literally hearing the boat being crushed. So the very vehicle that they're going to return with is done. It sinks, and at that moment, Shackleton's focus had changed, and it went from being the successful traveler that went the farthest into the South Pole. His goal was to get every single man home alive, like that. But there's a story, and so what they did is they got their lifeboats. They tracked across miles and miles, and they took to the water. They got over to this island. They were trying to get over to this island called Elephant Island, so they could hopefully, flag down a ship and then return. And they went to this place called Elephant Island. It was like this volcanic outcrop, and it was horrific. And Shackleton, got his men busy doing things, so they weren't getting antsy and stuff. And it was like 3 weeks, and it was like they realized that they were going to end up dying there. And so Shackleton had the carpenter take I think they were like 16 feet long, reinforce this lifeboat, and him and 4 of the people were going to try to get to South Georgia Island, 800 miles away. And they had packed food for 3 weeks because he said, if we don't get there in 3 weeks, we're dead. Impossible odds. And I'm getting all of this to this point. And he had his navigation guy with him. And at night, the boat's rocking and stuff. And he's sitting here with his device, looking at the stars. And they said if he was off by a half a degree, they would have missed South Georgia Island by miles and died at sea. And I always remembered that, if they were off by a half a degree. And I say that to say that you have to have razor sharp focus. The enemy is out there 24/7 trying to discourage you, trying to bring you down, and trying to get you distracted. And it doesn't take a lot, right? And it could be one negative comment. You'll never do that, And we talked about that earlier. I heard this quote one time that one encouraging comment to somebody can change somebody's life. But it's the idea of just staying focused. Don't get distracted. When you have your vision, stick to it and don't get distracted. So
awesome. Yeah, I tell you what, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming on today. I put in the description of this video your link, Britfield.com, for folks to go there and check you out. Where else can they go to get your books? I'm sure you're everywhere.
Yeah, we're on like 80 platforms. Amazon's obviously the easiest, and but if you buy on Britfield.com website, which is an award-winning website, it's got over 400 pictures of England, interactive maps. It's designed that if you're reading the book or teaching the book, use the website. But if you buy through there, you get a signed copy with a bookmark and a sticker. And I won't be doing too much of the signed copies because I'm getting really busy, but I do enjoy doing that. And I think all of us right now, and I appreciate this opportunity, but this is a piece of history. We're living history right now, and it's exciting. And we've got 15 countries that are about to pull the trigger on international rights, and we just picked up the Czech Republic, my Czech brothers and sisters. And our first actually official country that we picked up, Britfield the Lost Crown, was Poland. And we're now published in book 1, 2, and 3 is going to be published in Polish. And last year we had record sales in Poland, and I can't wait to get to Poland and tour that country for 3 weeks and stuff. So it's an exciting time. This is an exciting time of history. Resetting the bar, raising the standards of literature, restoring your faith in literature. And I believe that Britfield is this generation's book series.
I love it. I love it. And I would love to have you back on before your launch of your movie. That's
sure. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun behind the scenes. We're going to have a lot of fun with the movie. We're doing like an 18-month promotion of the film, global tour and promotion of the movie. We're going to rock this world. So we're excited.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day. God bless you.
God bless.
Wow. That's why I wanted to bring him on, is to feel his energy, to feel his passion. I really believe he is going to change a lot of things for the good, and not only our country, but in the world. And just, again, getting back to the basics and getting back to the creativity and imagination. And I think we all know and believe that that is what it's needed now more than ever. We have literally screwed up a generation of kids with the lockdowns, with the CRT, with the DEI, with everything they continue to push, this Marxist movement that continues to happen here in the United States. And it's just good to get a breath of fresh air and understand and realize that we're in good hands, because we have people like Chad that are putting himself out there and pushing things to get great information to these children, because it is about these kids, because we all want all of our aspirations to take root, our legacies to grow, but most importantly, we want our future generations, our kids, to thrive as well. And so if you want to pick up a copy of his book, go to Britfield.com. The link is in the description of this video. He's obviously on Amazon and everything else, and enjoy it. And I love the idea of reading with your kids. That is a lost art, that is for sure. So a lot of noise going on out in the world, but it's good to get some positivity on this platform, that is for sure. So God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan, of course, and always God bless these United States. Until next time, folks.